Most nose tutorials show you what to draw, but not how to study it. That's a different skill, and it's the one that's actually important. Artists often drift into mindless study sessions that doesn't train the brain to analyze why we draw something in a specific way. Instead, we repeat what we already know, and that leads to frustrating skill plateaus. And that's why we need to have a closer look at how we structure our studies. I've been learning to draw the human body systematically, step by step, from the torso to the arms and legs to the skull and the eyes, and in the last few weeks, the nose. I thought it would be quick, but it wasn't. So I built out my full study process, from establishing a base using construction to drawing a nose completely from imagination. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my process. Not just the drawings, but the method, so you can apply it to any subject you're stuck on. Okay, let's start with base 1. This is where I begin every new study, drawing the subject from the most common angles. Not to be good at it, but to know where I actually am. In this step, I already notice what I'm struggling with the most and what just looks off. This helps me realize what I need to focus my study on. Also, I will use these baseline drawings later to compare them to the new ones I do at the end. This is a really important step in seeing the progress you've made. Because if you can see the progress, the motivation to continue the studies will immediately follow. After establishing the baseline, I go hunting for information, namely watching YouTube videos, reading books and guides. I start with the general topic, and while learning, I figure out questions that have popped up and that need a deeper understanding. If a guide describes something I didn't totally get, I search for another one that might explain it better. Overall, it's always good to have a look at multiple sources to validate the information. For the nose, I realized that every artist has their own approach to drawing them, but the fundamental construction is always the same. First, there's the nasal bone, building the nose bridge. Then the ball or tip of the nose, which consists of cartilage. And finally, the wings, which are mostly fatty tissue. As always in art, breaking down a complex subject into easier to understand shapes is the way to go. But even here, each artist has its own way of doing it. For example, some are using rectangles and cutting out shapes for the tips of the nose and add shapes for the wings, while others use just a combination of a pyramid and a sphere. In this phase, you will probably already develop a preference for the construction method. At least I have, and for me, the pyramid was just easier to imagine in 3D. And with this decision made, phase 3 gets started. Here, I practice my method of choice by first drawing them on some reference images to get a feel for it. Then I keep the references close, but I'm not drawing onto them. I draw it in different angles and try to rotate the pyramid in 3D space, which is something I always struggle with. So I draw it step by step through a full rotation. Front, 3/4, side, below, from the top, everything. When I think I have a good grasp on these, I continue straight to the fun stuff, adding organic shapes to create a nose from this abstract construction. Let's make a quick sidestep and talk about the time I spent on each of these steps. I think this is something highly depending on each artist's life circumstances. I don't want to dictate how much time you should spend on each of these, but even a short practice of 10 minutes is better than no practice at all. For me, I have around 1 to 2 hours a day to spend on making art. So my study time is limited to that. I usually plan to allocate one face or angle for one of these sessions. But if I don't feel confident enough after these 1 to 2 hours of practice, I just add another session to it. I want to be able to construct and draw my subject relatively confident without always referring to references. And another quick interlude here on what to achieve with these studies. When studying a subject, for example the nose, you don't aim to draw everyone's nose. You try to establish a mental model of a nose, like a blueprint from which you can deviate intentionally. This is what I call my default nose. It's a really important concept that we need to keep in mind when studying. And with that in mind, let's continue to the core part of this process, the angle studies. First, I start always with the front view. In this part of the study, I will keep my references close, but don't really copy them. Noses come in different shapes. Some are more pointy, others are more bent down. To make the study more interesting, I try to get some variations into those nose shapes, with more or less success. And I settled here on some angle, which is my default nose. After that, I continue to the side view. Again, in this phase, I keep my references minimal just to have some images to have to look on in between. Getting different shapes is easiest for me here in the side view. The bump of the nose bridge can give a lot more character. I also try to visualize always how the different planes of the nose are arranged and create the shadows based on that. This helps me a lot when facing the next, more difficult angle, the 3/4 angle. This is so difficult because you must consider the perspective. But overall, I do the same process as with the other two angles. Place the construction and then give them more organic shapes. I keep the references minimal and try to make it more fun by experimenting with the shapes. Looking at it now, I already see some wrong things, especially when you can see the other nostril on the far side. Its placement is not always right. But that's a good thing when you're studying. You learn to identify why things look wrong. For the last part of these core studies, I tried some upward and downward angles. Usually I don't focus too much on these kind of angles because I want to master the easier ones first. But this time I was really motivated. So I searched for some references and tried to apply my construction on these. Nothing fancy here, it was just really copying from references with using my construction method. And that brings us to the most exciting part of the study process. I take my baseline drawings from day one and redraw them with my new acquired knowledge. Here, the progress will show its face. At least I hope so. And for my nose studies, there is definitely more structure, especially when adding shading. A better understanding of the 3D forms that build the nose, and just less guessing and drawing until it looks right. Overall, I think the progress is not that big, but it's definitely there. But as always, the goal of these studies is not perfection, but understanding. So to summarize it all together, here are the main takeaways. First, establish a baseline. Draw what you like to study to find out where you're at and what you're struggling with. Second, get informations. Books, tutorials, guides. Learn about the things you don't know. Third, just construction. Create your subject from basic shapes and find out a method that works for you. Fourth, the core studies. Apply what you learned in the tutorials and the guides. And lastly, the before and after comparison. Point out what has improved and what you're still struggling with. This will be your to-do list for your next study. And that's it. That's how I plan out every study I do. It's what works best for me, and maybe some things of it also works for you. But let me know how you structure your study sessions. Are you just winging it? Or do you need some kind of strict plan like me? Anyway, I hope this video brought you some ideas for your own study plans. And if you want to know what I do when I feel demotivated and overwhelmed by all this endless studying, watch this video next. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next one.